The clock is ticking for the WNBA, and the sound is getting louder with every passing day. As 2026 looms, the league is staring down the kind of crisis that doesn't just shake a season. It threatens a very foundation the league has been trying to build for decades. The problem has a name: Caitlin Clark. And not in the usual way where Clark's name means good news, record ratings, sold-out arenas, and jerseys flying off the shelves. This time, it's the opposite. The biggest star in the league is also its biggest question mark. Will she still be here in 2 years? Or will she take her generational talent and the massive audience that follows her somewhere else? If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. Right now, the odds are uncomfortably tilted toward somewhere else. It's not hard to see why. Clark is at the absolute peak of her marketability. She's the face of the WNBA to casual fans, the kind of player who moves a needle just by stepping onto the court. But unlike the NBA or NFL, the WNBA's financial structure isn't built to reward that kind of star power the way it should. That's where the current collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, comes in. The players are pushing hard for a massive salary jump, something in the range of $1 million for the league's top-tier talent. And they're not asking for it just because they want it. They're asking for it because they've proven they deserve it. The league's growth in ratings, attendance, and revenue over the past 2 seasons hasn't happened in a vacuum. It's been fueled by the star power of players like Clark, Angel Reese, Sabrina Ionescu, and others who made WNBA games must-see events. But there's a harsh truth hiding under all of that momentum. The WNBA's financial model simply can't handle that kind of pay jump right now. The league doesn't have the deep pockets or the billion-dollar media deals that keep the NBA or NFL thriving. Every dollar matters. And in the middle of that fragile structure, the players see a rare moment of leverage, the kind that comes once in a generation. The danger? Leverage cuts both ways. If the players hold firm and the league refuses to budge, the 2026 season could be in jeopardy. A lockout, even a short one, would be devastating. Not just because games will be missed, but because the WNBA doesn't have the kind of cultural cushion that other leagues have. The NFL could survive a year of turmoil. The NBA could absorb a lockout and bounce back. The WNBA? It's still too early in its growth for that kind of hit. And here's where the panic really sets in. If the season stalls or salaries stay flat, Clark could walk. That's not speculation. That's reality. The rise of Unrivaled, the new competing league promising higher pay and better working conditions, is already turning heads. Overseas leagues have been paying top WNBA players more money for years, often with shorter schedules and fewer games. For Clark, whose name carries global value, the math is simple. Why stay in a league that can't or won't pay you what you're worth? If Unrivaled or an overseas contract can offer double, triple, or quadruple what the WNBA can, it's not just an alternative. It's a challenge to the league's very ability to keep its stars. The real danger isn't just losing Clark the player. It's losing what she represents. Right now, she's the centerpiece of the WNBA's most successful stretch in its history. She's driven record-breaking viewership, brought in fans who've never watched women's basketball before, and made the Fever a top draw in every city they visit. If she leaves, that casual fan interest doesn't automatically stay with the league. It follows her. That's the nature of modern sports. Audiences are attached to stars more than teams, especially when those stars are as magnetic as Clark. And if those fans go, so do the ticket sales. So do the jersey numbers. So do the ratings that have finally given the WNBA negotiating power with networks and sponsors. In other words, losing Clark isn't just a roster change. It's a revenue collapse. The irony here is that the league has been trying to prepare for a moment like this for years. The CBA negotiations were supposed to be a tool to secure the future, not a ticking time bomb. But every delay, every sticking point over salaries, benefits, and scheduling has made the gap between player expectations and league capabilities wider. The players see the growth, the headlines, and the media attention, and they want to be compensated accordingly. The league sees the same growth, but also sees the balance sheet. And it knows that while the trajectory is promising, the money isn't there yet. It's a classic case of vision colliding with reality. And when that happens in sports, the fallout can be brutal. If the WNBA loses Clark in 2026, it won't just be because of money. It'll be because the league failed to turn this moment of momentum into a sustainable business model fast enough to keep her. There's another risk that almost no one is talking about: the double disaster scenario. Let's say Clark leaves for Unrivaled, chasing the bigger paycheck and better conditions. If Unrivaled thrives, the WNBA loses its biggest star and the audience she brings. But if Unrivaled fails after she leaves, the damage might be even worse. The WNBA would still have lost her, but now she'd be associated with another league, maybe even burn out on returning. And the WNBA's brand would have taken a hit for not being able to keep her in the first place. It's a lose-lose unless the WNBA acts now. So what does acting now look like? It means locking Clark into a league-friendly contract before the CBA crisis boils over. It means finding creative ways to pay top-tier stars without blowing up the financial model. Things like revenue sharing, endorsement matching, or performance bonuses tied directly to ticket sales and ratings. It also means being honest with the public and the players about the state of the league's finances. Right now, there's a perception gap. Players see sold-out arenas and think the league is swimming in money. The reality is that much of that revenue is being used just to keep the operation running. And while growth is real, it's not yet at the point where million-dollar salaries are sustainable across the board. If the league can bridge that gap, if it can convince players like Clark that staying in the WNBA now will lead to even bigger opportunities down the road, then maybe this crisis can be avoided. But the clock is ticking, and every delay makes that bridge harder to build. The next 2 years will decide more than just Caitlin Clark's future. They'll decide whether the WNBA can transition from a fragile growth stage into a mature, stable league that can weather the storms of labor disputes and competition. They'll decide whether the league can keep its stars long enough to turn casual fans into lifelong ones. And make no mistake, if Clark leaves, it's not just her jersey sales that vanish. It's the kids who beg their parents for tickets to see her play. It's the casual sports fans who tune in because of her story. It's the sponsors who sign deals because her face was on the promotional material. That's the scale of what's at risk. For now, Clark is still here. She's still selling out arenas. She's still hitting logo threes and lighting up highlight reels. But the WNBA can't take that for granted. Because if 2026 arrives without a solution, the league won't just lose a player. It could lose the moment it spent decades building toward. And in sports, moments like this don't come around twice. The WNBA has had stars before, legends like Lisa Leslie, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Maya Moore, players who dominated on the court and inspired off of it. But Caitlin Clark's situation is different because the league has never had a star arrive in an era where social media, streaming, and 24/7 sports coverage could magnify her every move to a global audience. Clark isn't just a player. She's a walking marketing campaign. Her games trend on Twitter before they're even over. Every highlight gets clipped, remixed, and posted 100 times over. Kids aren't just wearing her jersey. They're mimicking her moves in TikTok videos that rack up millions of views. That's not just fandom. That's cultural penetration, the kind of thing leagues dream of but can rarely manufacture. And that's exactly why 2026 is such a dangerous year for the WNBA. They finally have the star power to pull in people who've never cared about women's basketball before. They finally have someone who can make a midweek game in Indiana feel like a national event. But the league is staring down a business reality that threatens to push her right out the door. If the CBA negotiations keep stalling, the WNBA is going to find itself in an impossible spot. Players aren't just asking for incremental raises. They want a full recalibration of what a WNBA salary should look like. The $250,000 max salary, which might sound substantial to the average fan, is a fraction of what top players can make overseas or in rival leagues like Unrivaled. And those leagues aren't just offering more money. They're offering lighter schedules, better travel, and a work-life balance the WNBA can't match right now. That's the kind of offer that's hard to turn down, especially for someone like Clark, whose brand is already so strong that she could be financially secure for life by age 30 if she maximizes these prime earning years. The WNBA's counterargument has always been about sustainability. They point out that raising salaries too quickly without a guaranteed revenue stream could collapse the league entirely. And they're not wrong, but that's a logic that doesn't sell to the players living it day to day. For the players, especially the stars, the growth is here now. The fans are here now. The momentum is here now. And they don't want to hear about what's possible in 10 years, when their careers might only last another 5 or 6 at peak performance. This is where the tension sharpens into a real crisis. Both sides have valid points, but the timeline mismatch could sink the whole thing. If Clark were to leave, it wouldn't be out of spite. It would be out of pragmatism. She's already the biggest draw in women's basketball, arguably in all of women's sports right now. That kind of status comes with a short shelf life. She has a limited number of years where she can cash in on her fame while still being at the top of her game. If the WNBA can't meet her halfway financially, she'll be forced to look somewhere else. And here's the uncomfortable truth for the league. Clark's departure wouldn't just hurt. It would be a public admission that the WNBA can't compete for its own stars. That message would echo far beyond Clark. Other rising players would start making long-term plans that don't include the WNBA. Fans who came for Clark would drift away. Sponsors, especially those tied to her image, might follow her to whatever league she joined next. The fallout wouldn't be a slow decline. It would be immediate, even if the league tried to spin it. We support Caitlin's decision. We wish her the best. Everyone would know what really happened. They couldn't pay to keep their best player. That's the kind of headline you don't recover from quickly. This is why some experts are calling 2026 a make-or-break year, not just for Clark, but for the entire league's trajectory. It's not just about avoiding a lockout. It's about proving the WNBA can evolve fast enough to keep up with the opportunities and the threats around it. Unrivaled is the most obvious threat, backed by significant funding and spearheaded by well-known names in women's basketball. The league is positioning itself as a premium alternative to the WNBA. They're promising top salaries, fewer games, better rest, and marketing deals baked into contracts. For a star like Clark, that's not just tempting. It's almost tailor-made. Then there's the overseas option. Places like Turkey, Russia, and China have been paying women's basketball stars far more than the WNBA for years. Brittany Griner, Breanna Stewart, Diana Taurasi. They've all gone overseas in the offseason to make money the WNBA could never match. The only reason Clark hasn't done it yet is because she's been focused on building her stateside brand. But if the WNBA loses its grip on her, that calculation could change fast. The league knows all of this. They know Clark's value isn't just in her scoring average or her passing ability. It's in her ability to fill arenas, draw TV ratings, and move merchandise in ways the league hasn't seen before. That's why the idea of losing her isn't just bad. It's existential. And yet, knowing all that doesn't automatically produce the money needed to fix the problem. The WNBA's broadcast deals are improving, but still nowhere near NBA level. Sponsorships are increasing, but the total revenue pie isn't big enough to give million-dollar salaries to multiple players without risking financial instability. That's the reality the league office is wrestling with. How to keep Clark happy and in the fold without setting a precedent they can't sustain. One option being floated is to create a marquee player exception, a salary slot that allows the league to pay certain players outside the standard cap, funded in part by league-wide sponsorships tied directly to that player's image. In theory, it's a win-win. The player gets paid what they're worth, and the league can justify the expense as an investment in its top marketing asset. Another approach could be revenue sharing, where players receive a cut of the profits from TV deals, ticket sales, and merchandise. The NBA has a similar model, and while the numbers will be smaller in the WNBA, it could give players a direct stake in growing the league's income. The problem? Both of these ideas require significant changes to the CBA, and right now those negotiations are crawling. The players have short-term leverage, but the league has the long-term control over the infrastructure. It's a standoff, and the clock is ticking. If nothing changes, the worst-case scenario becomes more and more likely. Clark leaves, Unrivaled poaches other stars, the WNBA's momentum flatlines, and years of progress are erased in a single offseason. It's hard to overstate just how big the stakes are here. This isn't like losing a star to injury or retirement. This would be losing a star in the prime of her career to a rival that offers everything the WNBA doesn't. That's not just a roster hit. That's a credibility hit. And credibility is one of the most valuable currencies a league can have when it's still fighting for space in the sport world. Fans can feel the tension already. Every time Clark is asked about her future, she sidesteps with a polished answer about focusing on the season. Every time a reporter brings up unrivaled or overseas money, social media buzzes with speculation. The longer the uncertainty hangs in the air, the more it becomes part of the conversation around every game she plays. That's the danger for the WNBA. This isn't just a backroom contract negotiation anymore. It's a storyline, one that's building momentum, with or without the league's control. If they don't get ahead of it soon, it will define the 2026 season before it even begins. And if that happens, even keeping Clark might not be enough to undo the damage. The WNBA has an opportunity right now, a rare, fragile, and incredibly valuable opportunity, to prove it can protect its stars and grow its business at the same time. But that window won't stay open forever. If they miss it, the panic people are talking about now will look tame compared to what happens next. What makes this entire situation even more precarious for the WNBA is that Caitlin Clark isn't just another elite player whose absence will be felt on the court. She is the league's main attraction to casual audiences. She's the reason parents who've never followed the WNBA suddenly know when Indiana Fever games are on. She's the reason a sold-out crowd in one city can feel like a playoff atmosphere in June. She's a spark plug behind a momentum wave the league has never truly experienced. And waves like that don't come around twice. That's why 2026 isn't just a year on the calendar. It's the deadline for whether the WNBA will solidify its future or watch it slip away. If Clark decides to leave, the consequences aren't linear, they're exponential. It's not just about losing her points and assists. It's about losing the halo effect she's brought to every other player and team. Ratings for games she's not even in have been higher because of the awareness she's created. Kids who watch her highlights end up knowing who else plays in the league. That's how fan ecosystems grow. And without her, that whole chain reaction weakens. The frightening truth for the WNBA is that it has very little margin for error. Other leagues, with decades of established history and billions in the bank, can weather the loss of a star or two without their bottom line taking too big a hit. The WNBA doesn't have that cushion. A single misstep, especially one involving the league's most bankable player, could set them back not just seasons, but years. CBA negotiations are the pressure cooker here. Right now, players want more than a modest bump. They want a leap that would put their salaries on par with what they could earn in rival leagues or overseas. That means $750,000 to $1 million for top players. The league's current max salary hovers closer to $250,000, not counting bonuses or endorsements. While the WNBA has made progress in travel, accommodations, and exposure, the hard truth is that salaries are still far behind the market value of players like Clark. For the players, it's a matter of respect and recognition. For the league, it's a matter of survival. They can't just snap their fingers and make that money appear. Every additional dollar they commit has to come from somewhere. Ticket revenue, sponsorships, media deals. And while all those areas are growing, they're not yet growing at the pace needed to sustain million-dollar contracts across the board. The stalemate isn't just financial, it's philosophical. Players see the momentum and believe this is the moment to demand the change they've been waiting for. The league office sees the same momentum, but fears that overspending now could push the business into dangerous territory. The result is a slow-moving collision that could explode in 2026 if neither side bends. Now layer in the looming shadow of unrivaled. This new league isn't hypothetical. It's already attracting attention with its promises of better pay, fewer games, and more player-friendly conditions. And unlike the overseas option, Unrivaled would allow Clark to stay in the U.S., keep her American fan base, and still collect a paycheck far beyond what the WNBA can currently offer. For her, it would be the ultimate best-of-both-worlds scenario. If Clark makes that jump, it won't just be a talent drain. It will be a public declaration that the WNBA couldn't hold onto its most important asset. Imagine the headlines. WNBA star Caitlin Clark leaves for rival league. The media frenzy alone would be enough to overshadow any season the WNBA tried to have without her. Every press conference, every game recap, every sponsorship pitch would come with the unspoken question, if they couldn't keep her, who's next? And the answer to that question could very well be a lot of people. Because once one star leaves, the path is open for others to follow. Athletes talk. They compare paychecks, travel schedules, training facilities. If unrivaled or overseas leagues can outmatch the WNBA in every category that matters to players, the WNBA will be left trying to compete for talent on a budget it can't stretch. This is why locking Clark into a favorable contract before the CBA comes to a head isn't just smart, it's essential. It will buy the league time, give them a chance to restructure salaries in a way that doesn't blow up the financial model, and send a clear message to fans and sponsors that their biggest star isn't going anywhere. Without that kind of proactive move, the league will be negotiating with her future, hanging over every conversation like a storm cloud. But even if the league manages to keep her, the way they keep her matters. If she feels underpaid, undervalued, or boxed by a system that doesn't reward her impact, the seeds of dissatisfaction will still be planted. That's why solutions like a marquee player exception or revenue-sharing bonuses are worth considering. Let the top stars earn more without destabilizing the rest of the league's salary structure. Let their pay reflect the audiences and dollars they personally bring in. It's also about transparency. One of the biggest issues in the current negotiations is the perception gap between players and the league. Players see packed arenas and viral highlights and assume the league is cashing in big. The league sees rising costs, limited TV money, and profit margins that don't yet match the hype. Closing that perception gap with hard numbers and honest conversations could diffuse some of the tension. The other part of the equation is urgency. The WNBA can't afford to treat this like a normal negotiation cycle. Time isn't neutral here. Every week that passes without clarity on Clark's future is another week for speculation to grow, another week for Unrivaled to whisper in her ear, another week for overseas teams to run the math on what they could offer. The longer the uncertainty lasts, the harder it will be to pull back the narrative. Fans are already picking up on the tension. It's in the way Clark answers questions about the future. Polite but non-committal. It's in the way commentators bring up rival leagues during broadcasts, almost as if they're planting seeds for what comes next. That kind of constant buzz can start to wear on a league's image. Instead of celebrating the here and now, everyone's looking ahead to what might be lost. And make no mistake, losing Clark would feel like losing more than just a player. It would feel like the league missed its once-in-a-generation opportunity to break into the mainstream in a lasting way. Sure, other stars will come. Other rookies will generate hype. But the timing, the cultural landscape, and Clark's unique appeal make this moment one of those rare alignments that sports executives dream about. The WNBA has spent decades fighting for a seat at the table. Right now, they're not just at the table. They've got one of the biggest talking points in all of sports sitting there with them. If they let that slip away, it won't just be a lost season. It'll be a message to every player, every fan, and every sponsor that when push came to shove, the league couldn't protect what mattered most. That's why 2026 isn't simply another year. It's the fork in the road. One path leads to stability, long-term growth, and the kind of credibility that makes players want to spend their entire careers in the WNBA. The other leads to rebuilding from scratch, fighting to win back an audience that already moved on.